What if the very thing you're doing to be accepted is the one thing keeping you from being truly loved? What if the smile you wear, the "I'm fine" you repeat, the strong face you put on every day is quietly building a wall between you and everyone around you? Because here's the truth most of us don't want to say out loud. You can be surrounded by people and still feel completely alone. You can be admired and still feel unseen. You can be liked and still feel unknown. And if you've ever laid in bed at night thinking, nobody really knows me, then this conversation is for you. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you're going to understand why connection has felt so hard and what it actually takes to experience the kind of relationships where you can finally exhale and just be. We learn to pretend early. We learn which emotions are too much. We learn which parts of our story make people uncomfortable. We learn how to shape shift to be agreeable, impressive, easy, strong, funny, successful. We become experts at reading the room and adjusting ourselves so we don't get rejected. And it works at first. People like us. They praise us. They accept the version of us we present. But here's the quiet heartbreak. They are connecting with the performance, not the person, and you feel it. That subtle loneliness in the middle of conversations. That strange emptiness after being the strong one again. That ache of wishing someone would look at you and say, "You don't have to do all that here." Pretending protects you from rejection, but it also blocks real connection. Because connection requires two things to be true at the same time. You are seen, and you are accepted. If you are only accepted for who you pretend to be, you are not truly connected. You are managing impressions, not building intimacy. Real connection begins the moment the mask slips. It begins when you say, "Actually, I'm not okay." When you admit, "I don't have it all together." When you let someone see the fear, the confusion, the messy middle you usually hide. And yes, that is terrifying, because the voice in your head says, if they see the real me, they'll leave. But here's the twist. The people who leave when you stop pretending were never connected to you in the first place. They were connected to your performance. The ones who stay, those are your people. Vulnerability is not oversharing. It's not drama. It's not weakness. It is the simple, brave act of letting yourself be seen without guarantees. It's saying, this is me, not polished, not perfect, but real. And that is where belonging lives, not in being impressive, not in being flawless, not in never needing help, but in being known. The moment you drop the act, you give others permission to do the same. One honest sentence can change the entire emotional temperature of a relationship. One "I'm struggling" can turn surface talk into soul talk. One tear held back for years can open a space where love finally feels safe. Connection is not built in our strengths alone. It's built in shared humanity, in the places where we are unsure, tender, and real. Yes, pretending might keep you safe from embarrassment, but it also keeps you safe from love, and love, the deep, grounding, "I see you and I'm not going anywhere" kind, only grows in the spaces where we stop performing and start showing up as we are. So maybe the question isn't, how do I get people to like me? Maybe the real question is, where in my life am I brave enough to be known? Because real connection doesn't begin when you impress people. It begins the moment you stop pretending and trust that who you are is enough to be seen. There's a particular kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. It's the kind that sits behind your eyes when you've been on all day. When you've smiled at the right moments, said the acceptable things, laughed when everyone else did, nodded like you understood, acted like you weren't hurt, weren't confused, weren't overwhelmed. It's the exhaustion that comes from performing a version of yourself you hope will be easier for the world to handle. And the strange part is, from the outside, your life might look completely fine. You're responsible. You show up, you do what's expected. People might even describe you as strong, positive, put together. But inside, there's this quiet depletion, like you've been holding your breath for years and forgot what it feels like to breathe all the way out. Performing a perfect life is not always about big lies. Most of the time, it's built from tiny edits. It's saying, "I'm good," when you're not. It's downplaying how much something hurt. It's pretending you're not lonely because you don't want to sound needy. It's acting unbothered when you care deeply. These small moments seem harmless, but stacked together over months and years, they create a version of you that is polished, acceptable, and deeply disconnected from your real emotional experience. You start to become the easy one. The one who doesn't cause trouble. The one who doesn't ask for too much. The one who keeps it together. And people appreciate that. They rely on you. They praise you for being low maintenance, strong, mature. But what they don't see is how much effort it takes to maintain that image. What they don't feel is the weight you carry trying to make sure your real feelings don't leak out and make anyone uncomfortable. The performance doesn't just happen socially. It happens internally too. You convince yourself you shouldn't feel what you feel. You tell yourself others have it worse. You minimize your pain. You become both the actor and the audience, constantly monitoring, adjusting, correcting. You don't just hide from others, you start hiding from yourself. And that's where the real exhaustion sets in. Because pretending requires constant vigilance. You're always scanning. Is this emotion acceptable? Is this story too much? Will this make me look weak? You're editing in real time, filtering your words, softening your truth, shaping your personality to fit the moment. There is no rest in that. There is no place to set the mask down. Over time, you might notice a growing sense of emptiness, even in the middle of connection. You're with people, but you feel strangely absent. Conversations happen, but they skim the surface. You leave gatherings feeling drained instead of filled. Not because the people are bad, But because you never actually arrived as yourself, you sent a representative. The cruel irony is that the performance often begins as protection. Maybe at some point, being fully yourself led to rejection, criticism, or being misunderstood. So you learned, you adapted. You figured out which parts of you were safe to show and which parts needed to stay hidden. That strategy probably helped you survive something hard. It made sense then. But what once protected you can slowly become a prison, because the same walls that keep out judgment also keep out real intimacy. When people only see the curated version of you, they can only connect with that version. And no matter how much they like it, it never lands as love, because deep down you know they're not seeing the whole picture. That's the ache being appreciated but not known, needed but not understood, surrounded but still alone. The body keeps track of this, the tight shoulders, the constant mental chatter, the Sunday night dread that isn't just about work, but about another week of showing up as someone slightly edited. You might not call it pretending. You might call it being responsible, being professional, being mature. But if there is no space in your life where you can drop the act, where you don't have to manage your image, your nervous system never fully relaxes, and exhaustion becomes your baseline. You may even start to forget what the unedited version of you feels like. What do I actually think? What do I actually want? What do I actually feel? These questions get fuzzy when you've spent years prioritizing what will keep things smooth over what is true. The performance becomes so automatic you don't realize you're doing it until you're alone, staring at the ceiling, feeling a sadness you can't quite name. That sadness often isn't about one big problem. It's grief for the self you've sidelined, the emotions you've swallowed, the needs you've convinced yourself were too much. It's the cost of being agreeable at the expense of being authentic. And here's the hard truth: you cannot perform your way into deep connection. You might perform your way into approval, success, even admiration. But connection, the kind where you feel safe, seen, and steady, requires your real presence. And your real presence can't emerge when all your energy is going into managing how you appear. The exhaustion you feel isn't a personal failure. It's a signal, a quiet, persistent message from your body and heart saying, "This is too heavy to carry alone. This mask is too tight. I want to come home." Most pretending doesn't start with ego. It starts with fear. The fear is usually quiet, old, and deeply wired into us. If I show who I really am, I might lose connection. I might be judged. I might be rejected. And for human beings, rejection doesn't just sting, it feels dangerous. Our brains are built to experience social exclusion almost like physical pain. So when we sense even the possibility of not being accepted, something in us moves fast to protect. That protection often looks like shaping ourselves into what feels more acceptable. Not because we're fake, but because we're adaptive. We read faces, tones, reactions. We learn which emotions get comfort and which get ignored. We notice which traits are praised and which are criticized. Slowly, almost invisibly, we start building a version of ourselves designed to reduce risk. Maybe you learned that being too emotional made people uncomfortable, so you became the calm one. Maybe your excitement was once met with eye rolls, so you toned down your joy. Maybe you needed support and were told you were dramatic, so you became hyper-independent. These adjustments don't feel like pretending at first. They feel like growing up, like becoming easier to love. At the center of it all is one core fear: if they see the real me, they might not stay. And that fear makes sense. Most of us have moments in our past that seem to confirm it. A time we opened up and were dismissed. A time we showed sadness and were told to toughen up. A time we were different and felt left out. Those experiences teach us powerful lessons, especially when we're young. Belonging is conditional. Love is something you earn by being the right way. So we develop strategies. We become impressive, helpful, agreeable, funny, successful, strong, whatever earned us approval. We don't sit down and decide, "I'm going to hide who I am." It's more like a quiet trade we make without realizing it. I'll show the parts that work and tuck away the parts that might cost me connection. The fear of rejection is sneaky because it disguises itself as logic. You tell yourself you're just being professional, polite, low drama. You say, "This isn't the right time to bring that up," or "I don't want to burden anyone." And sometimes that's true. But when there is never a right time, when you consistently silence your own inner world, fear is usually in the driver's seat. What makes this fear so powerful is that it's not just about people leaving. It's about what their leaving would mean. It can feel like proof that you are too much, not enough, too complicated, too sensitive, too flawed. Rejection hits the deepest insecurities we carry about our worth. So pretending becomes less about others and more about self-protection. If I manage myself perfectly, maybe I can control how I'm seen. Maybe I can avoid that old pain. But there's a hidden tension in this strategy. The more you try to control how others see you, the less you let them actually see you. And the less they see you, the more fragile the connection feels. You start to believe that if you slip, if you had a messy day, if you showed doubt or need, everything would fall apart. So you double down on the performance. Fear of rejection also makes us mind readers. We assume we know what others will think. We predict disapproval before it happens. We reject ourselves on their behalf. You might not share your opinion because you're sure it's stupid. You might not ask for help because you're certain you'll be seen as weak. But often, those judgments are happening inside you, not outside. The fear has become internalized. And here's the exhausting part: when your behavior is driven by fear, there is never enough reassurance. People can compliment you, love you, choose you, and still it doesn't fully land. Because the voice underneath says they love the version I'm showing. If they knew the rest, it would be different. So even acceptance feels unstable. The tragedy is that the very thing you're trying to avoid, disconnection, becomes your reality in a different form. Not because people reject you, but because they never get the chance to truly know you. Fear keeps you safe from immediate hurt, but it also keeps you from the deeper safety of being accepted as you are. What fear doesn't tell you is that rejection, while painful, is also clarifying. When you show up more honestly, some people may pull back, and that can hurt. But it also makes space for the ones who lean in. The ones who don't need you to be smaller, quieter, stronger, or shinier than you really are. The fear says, hide and you'll belong. But real belonging doesn't come from fitting in perfectly. It comes from being accepted imperfectly. And that only becomes possible when, little by little, you risk letting the real you be seen, not because the fear disappears, but because the desire for real connection becomes stronger than the need to stay protected. There is a quiet ache that comes from being appreciated but not truly known. It's subtle, easy to miss, and often hard to explain. From the outside, everything looks successful in the world of relationships. People like you. They compliment you. They enjoy your company. You're included, invited, relied upon. By all visible measures, you are socially winning. And yet, underneath that approval, there's a loneliness that doesn't make sense. Because being liked and being known are not the same thing. When people like you for the version you present, the capable one, the funny one, the strong one, the easygoing one, it can feel good. There's a hit of relief in knowing you're accepted in that role. But if that role is carefully managed, edited, or incomplete, the connection rests on something fragile. Deep down, you know they're responding to a surface layer. A curated slice, a highlight reel of your personality and emotions. So every compliment carries a strange aftertaste. They say, you're always so put together, and instead of pride, you feel pressure. You think, if only you knew how messy I feel inside. They say, you're the strong one, and you smile, but inside you wonder where you're allowed to fall apart. The praise lands, but it doesn't sink in because it's not reaching the parts of you that feel most real. This is the hidden cost when you are liked but not known. You start to feel invisible in plain sight. You can sit at a table full of people who enjoy you and still feel like no one would notice if the real you disappeared. Not physically, but emotionally. The doubts, the fears, the tender places, those parts of you never get mirrored back, never get met. So you carry them alone, even while laughing in a group. Over time, this creates a quiet split inside. There's the outer self, competent, pleasant, functional, and the inner self, who holds the truth of your experience. The outer self gets all the interaction. The inner self stays backstage. And the longer this goes on, the more the inner self starts to feel neglected, almost abandoned by you. You might start to feel restless in relationships that seem perfectly fine. You can't point to a clear problem. No one is unkind. Nothing dramatic is wrong. But something essential is missing: the feeling of being emotionally met. Of someone saying, I see that part of you too, and I'm still here. When you're liked but not known, connection feels conditional, even if no one has stated conditions. You live with the quiet belief that if you stop being helpful, upbeat, strong, or impressive, the relationship might change. So you keep maintaining the image. You keep earning your place. And relationships start to feel like performances you can't step out of without consequences. This can also make you resentful. Though you may not admit it, you might feel unappreciated, not because people don't value you, but because they value the role you play more than the person you are underneath. You give support but don't ask for it. You listen but don't share. You show up but don't let yourself be held. Eventually, the imbalance wears on you. The hardest part is that others often don't know this is happening. They think things are good. They think you're fine because you tell them you are. They respond to the cues you give. If you never signal struggle, they assume there is none. So the loneliness continues quietly, not from a lack of people, but from a lack of emotional exposure. And here's the deeper cost: when you are not known, you don't get the corrective experience of being accepted as you actually are. The insecure voice in your head, the one that says you're too much, too sensitive, not enough, never gets challenged by reality. Because you never risk showing those parts, you never gather evidence that someone could see them and stay. So the belief that the real me is unlovable remains intact, untested, quietly running your life. Being liked without being known is emotionally safer in the short term. But in the long term, it starves you of the very thing you were trying to secure: real belonging. The kind where you don't have to constantly manage your image. The kind where you can say, I'm not okay, and the room doesn't get awkward. It gets closer. The kind where love doesn't feel like something you perform for, but something you're allowed to rest in. There's a moment in every real relationship where the conversation could stay comfortable or go deeper. It's the pause after someone asks, how are you? The split second where you can say, I'm good, and keep everything smooth, or tell a little more truth. That moment, small, ordinary, easy to miss, is often the doorway to real belonging, and walking through it requires vulnerability. Vulnerability has a terrible reputation. We confuse it with weakness, oversharing, or losing control. We imagine it as falling apart in front of people or exposing our deepest wounds to strangers. But vulnerability is usually much quieter than that. It's the simple act of being honest about your internal experience when there is no guarantee how it will be received. It's saying, I'm actually really overwhelmed lately. I felt hurt by that. I don't know what I'm doing. I need help. These sentences don't sound dramatic, but emotionally they are brave, because in those moments, you are stepping out without armor. You are no longer managing how impressive, composed, or low maintenance you appear. You are letting someone see your humanity in real time, and that is exactly what creates belonging. Belonging is not about fitting in. Fitting in is about adjusting yourself to match what you think the environment wants. Belonging is about being accepted as you are, and the only way to find out if you can be accepted as you are is to show who you are. Not the polished version, not the edited highlights, the real emotional landscape. Without vulnerability, relationships stay in the safe but shallow zone. You can talk about work, weather, plans, other people, and never actually reveal yourself. Everyone is present but slightly guarded. It feels pleasant but not nourishing, like drinking water when you're craving something deeper. The shift happens when someone takes the risk first, when one person says something real instead of rehearsed. Often you can feel the atmosphere change. The conversation slows. The energy softens. There's a moment of recognition. Oh, we're being real now. Vulnerability works like an invitation. When you share honestly, you silently tell the other person, you don't have to perform either. And most people are carrying their own hidden fears, doubts, and struggles. They're just waiting for a signal that it's safe to put them down. Your honesty becomes permission. This is how strangers become friends, how friendships become deep, how partnerships become intimate, not through perfection, but through shared humanness. Of course, vulnerability feels risky because it is. Not everyone will respond well. Some people will change the subject, minimize your feelings, or look uncomfortable. That doesn't mean vulnerability was a mistake. It means you gathered important information about where emotional safety does and doesn't exist. Belonging cannot be forced. It can only be discovered, and vulnerability is the tool that reveals it. There's also a powerful internal shift that happens when you practice being vulnerable. Each time you express something real and survive. Even if your voice shakes, you send yourself a new message: I can be seen and still be okay. You build trust with yourself. You stop abandoning your own experience just to keep things smooth. Over time, this changes how you show up. You become less focused on being impressive and more focused on being honest. You listen differently, speak differently, choose people differently. You start gravitating toward relationships where emotional truth is welcome, not awkward. Vulnerability doesn't mean sharing everything with everyone. It means sharing appropriately with people who have earned the right to hear it. It means moving at a human pace instead of a performative one. It means allowing your inner world to have a voice in your outer relationships. And here's the paradox: the very thing we fear will push people away is often what pulls the right people closer. Because everyone is tired of pretending. Everyone wants a place where they can exhale, where they don't have to be the strong one, the funny one, the perfect one. Belonging lives in those spaces, in the honest sentence, the unfiltered feeling, the moment you choose truth over image. That's where connection stops being a performance and starts being a shared human experience. It takes a particular kind of courage to be seen without armor. Not the loud, dramatic kind of courage we celebrate in movies, but the quiet, steady kind that shows up in ordinary conversations and unguarded moments. Armor, in this sense, isn't metal or shields. It's the emotional protection we build to avoid being hurt. It's the humor we use to deflect seriousness. The competence we hide behind so no one sees our uncertainty. The independence we perform so no one knows how much we need support. Armor is useful. It helps us function. It gets us through hard rooms, difficult seasons, unfamiliar spaces. At some point, it probably kept you safe. But the problem is, armor doesn't just block pain, it also blocks closeness. When you're armored up, people can admire you, rely on you, even respect you, but they can't fully reach you. And taking that armor off even a little can feel terrifying, because armor gives the illusion of control. If I stay impressive, maybe no one will see my flaws. If I stay strong, maybe no one can hurt me. If I don't need anything, maybe no one can reject me. Letting go of that protection means stepping into uncertainty. It means allowing others to see you in states you can't fully manage: confused, emotional, unsure, hopeful. That's where courage comes in. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision that connection matters more than protection in that moment. It's choosing to say the honest thing even when your heart is pounding. It's admitting you don't have it all together, even when you'd rather maintain the image that you do. Being seen without armor might look like telling a friend you're not coping as well as you've been pretending. It might mean saying in a relationship, "That hurt me," instead of acting unaffected. It might mean sharing a dream you're afraid to fail at, or an insecurity you usually hide behind jokes. These moments feel small from the outside, but internally they are leaps, because you are stepping into the possibility of being misunderstood, or not met the way you hope. You are releasing the script and letting the interaction be real, unscripted, human. What makes this kind of courage so challenging is that there are no guarantees. You can't control how someone will respond to the unarmored you. They might lean in with empathy. They might struggle. They might not know what to say. But courage says, my truth is worth expressing even if the outcome is uncertain. And something powerful happens when you act from that place. You begin to live in alignment with yourself instead of constantly managing how you're perceived. There's a sense of integrity that comes from showing up as you actually are, even if your voice shakes, even if your hands fidget, even if the words don't come out perfectly. Without armor, you are more exposed, but you are also more real. Your laughter is freer. Your tears, when they come, are honest. Your yes means yes. Your no means no. You stop twisting yourself into shapes that feel safer but smaller. This courage also changes the dynamics around you. When one person drops the armor, it often shifts the emotional tone of the entire space. Others feel the permission to soften too. Walls lower, conversations deepen. You move from roles, the strong one, the funny one, the responsible one, into real human exchange. And even when the response isn't perfect, there is still something grounding about having shown up honestly. You don't walk away replaying what you should have said or wishing you'd been braver. You know you were real. That builds a kind of inner steadiness that armor never could. Armor is heavy. It requires constant maintenance. Being seen without it is vulnerable. Yes, but it's also lighter. There is relief in not having to hold everything together all the time. Relief in being able to say, this is where I am today, without dressing it up. That is the quiet bravery at the heart of real connection, not performing strength, but risking honesty. Not proving your worth, but trusting it enough to let yourself be seen as you are in the moment you're actually living. Pretending doesn't just shape how people see you, it quietly shapes what your relationships are allowed to become. When you're constantly managing your image, editing your emotions, and presenting a controlled version of yourself, love, friendship, and trust can only grow within those limits. They don't get to reach the real you, because the real you is still behind the curtain. At first, pretending can make relationships look smoother. Fewer conflicts, less awkwardness. You don't bring up the thing that bothered you. You don't admit you felt left out. You don't say when you're overwhelmed or scared. You stay agreeable, easy, low maintenance. And people often respond well to that. Who wouldn't enjoy someone who never seems to have complicated feelings? But smooth isn't the same as close. Love deepens through shared emotional reality, not shared perfection. When you hide your struggles, the other person never gets the chance to show up for you. They might care deeply, but they can't support what they can't see. Over time, this creates an invisible imbalance. You may be there for them, listening, helping, holding space, but your own inner world remains mostly private. The relationship becomes one-sided in ways that are hard to name. Pretending also blocks trust in a subtle way. Trust isn't just believing someone won't hurt you. It's believing the relationship can hold the truth. When you constantly filter yourself, you send an unspoken message: this connection can't handle the full me. Even if the other person has never said that, your behavior reinforces it. You don't test the strength of the bond, so you never experience how strong it actually could be. This creates a fragile kind of closeness. Things feel good as long as you stay in role, but inside there's anxiety. What if I have a bad day? What if I need more? What if I can't be the strong one this time? You start to feel like the relationship depends on your performance. And anything that depends on performance never feels fully safe. Friendship suffers too. Real friendship isn't built only on shared interests or good times. It's built on mutual exposure, on being able to say, I'm not okay, and not feeling like you've broken the unspoken rules. If your friends only see the polished version of you, they may feel close to you, but you might still feel distant from them. Because closeness from your side requires being known, not just enjoyed. Pretending also prevents healthy conflict, which is essential for deep connection. If you never voice hurt or disagreement, resentment builds quietly. You smile on the surface, but underneath things pile up. Small misunderstandings never get cleared. Needs never get expressed. Eventually, the relationship can feel heavy or draining, and neither person fully understands why. Love needs truth to breathe. Not brutal honesty, not constant emotional unloading, but realness. The ability to say, that mattered to me. Or, I felt insecure about that, or I need reassurance right now. These moments might feel uncomfortable, but they are the building blocks of emotional intimacy. They show both people we can handle each other's inner worlds. When pretending runs the show, relationships stay at a distance from the places that actually create bonds. Vulnerability, need, imperfection, repair. You might spend years with someone and still feel like a part of you is untouched. Like there's a room inside you they've never entered. And here's the painful twist: the more you hide, the more alone you feel, and the more you may blame the relationship for not being deep enough. But depth requires access, and access requires honesty. Dropping the act even a little changes everything. When you let someone see your fear, your disappointment, your uncertainty, you give the relationship something real to hold. You move from managing impressions to building understanding, from avoiding discomfort to creating trust. Love, friendship, and trust don't grow because everything is perfect. They grow because two imperfect people keep choosing to show up honestly, even when it would be easier to pretend.